get started. Thank you all for joining today's didactic training session. Just a quick reminder that today's presentation is being recorded and will be posted to the Transcend website for future viewing. After the presentation, we'll have a time for question and answer when you can either ask questions directly or add the questions to the chat. And at the end of today's presentation, we'll also share a link to a short survey. Your feedback is extremely helpful in shaping future sessions, so we really appreciate you taking a couple minutes to complete it. And finally, I wanted to remind you that our next didactic training will be held on Tuesday, October 14th at 12 p.m. The topic will be working with data management and statistical colleagues, excuse me, presented by Dr. Leslie Lamb. And we look forward to seeing you there as well. And with that, I think we can begin. Again, welcome everyone to today's Transcend Professional Development Core Didactic Training titled Building Cohesive, Collegial, and Effective Research Teams. And we are especially fortunate to have Dr. Stephen Wonderlich leading today's presentation. Dr. Wonderlich is the interim president for research in Sanford Fargo and the Chester Fritz Distinguished Professor in Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences. He currently serves as the PI on the Center for Biobehavioral Mechanisms of Eating Behavior, COBRE, which is currently in phase 1 of funding. He has been continuously funded for NIH for over 25 years and has served as the PI on a variety of R mechanism grants over that time. Additionally, he served as the site PI in the Midwest Regional Postdoctoral Training Program in Eating Disorder Research, which is funded by the National Institute of Mental Health. The bulk of his funded research focuses on eating disorders, obesity, and bariatric surgery. He also served as co-director of the Sanford Eating Disorder and Weight Management Center, which is a broad-based clinic and hospital program for individuals with eating disorders. He also was appointed to the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-5 task force, which created the current diagnostic classification for psychiatric disorders in 2013. With that, please welcome Dr. Stephen Wonderlich.
Thank you, Kent. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you folks in another Transcend seminar. Today I'm gonna talk about research teams, and let me offer this caveat first, and that is there's obviously a variety of different structures and formats for research teams, depending on where you do your research. And I'm going to be using kind of a model that we do here. And this is kind of in the behavioral health, mental health, psychiatry, psychology sphere. I'm do my research in the Center for Biobehavioral Research. And so we have a particular format for our research teams, which might not be precisely like other researchers. But I do think a lot of the principles that I'll be talking about in terms of this type of research team translate into other scientific environments, as well as, quite frankly, just about any place where teams are working together. So with that, let me just start out the title, Building Cohesive, Collegial, and Effective Research Teams. It's sort of it's a giveaway, I guess. My take is there's a lot of different structures and taxonomies for research teams. I like this one, which is cohesive, that is quite integrated, collegial, interactive and reciprocally helpful, and then effective. They get the job done. So today, I'm going to try and cover a few things. I'm going to think about how to promote a functional research team. Then in the middle of this, I am going to transition. I'm going to talk about personal behavioral traits that might be useful to think about in terms of research leadership. And then I want to talk about how everybody on a research team can and should be essential. By the way, Kent, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So let me start out just a thought from Nelson Mandela, the first president of South Africa. If you want the cooperation of humans around you, you must make them feel they are important. And you do that by being genuine and humble, which I hope you'll see. I believe some of that is useful in the context that we're going to talk about today. Let me start out with a couple of case studies. Number one is JS. JS is an assistant professor, tenure track, very busy, needs to publish more for tenure review, teaching 2 courses, received an R03 from NIH. Comments from JS about research in the team. I'm really excited about the R03, but nervous. I've got so much to do, and I have a really good grad student who's going to run the team. She is great, and I have some really strong undergraduates. That should free me up. It's just a comment that we might want to come back and think about. And then a comment from the team. She is so smart and good, but she's kind of scary and intimidating. She makes me nervous. Case 2, SR. Currently on a K award at an R1 university, planning the research component of the K, has a small team of postdocs and students on a research team, plus a primary mentor who is very busy. SR's comment about about research and the team. Well, there's a lot going on in the K, and I have to get going on data collection. I'm not sure how to get it going. The team I'm thinking about is basically my social network from the department. I think I'll just have a meeting and start to figure it out. Again, just an interesting comment from SR, one that maybe we can ponder as we think about how to establish an effective team. And then the comment from the team, I'm glad to help, but I don't really know what about the research she does. So there's a lot of different ways that people get into establishing a research team, quite obviously. A paper in 2018 about establishing establishing research teams by Macris. Quote, leading a successful research program is akin to running a business. Both depend on innovation, collaboration, reputation for success. Yet few young investigators are prepared to lead research teams as they launch independent careers. Junior investigators universally feel ill-equipped to run a team. To achieve their research and career goals, new PIs must go beyond the science and refine their leadership and mentorship skills early in their career. So Macris is basically saying the science is fine, but if you're going to do team research, you need skills beyond research design, stats, measurement, etc. Now, I'm going to show you a little video. And sadly, I don't know how to do this. So the first 10 seconds will be some kind of a crazy advertisement that they randomly assign every time I log into this. And this is about NASA, and it's about the Saturn project. And you might think, what's the point here? And it's not, some joke or kind of weird presentation. I do think there's relevance to what we will hear in the next 4 minutes. You're going to hear about PI, you're going to hear about scientists, and you're going to hear about engineers, which the point that I think is relevant is that the scientist engineer team is the key. And let's just watch the video. Hopefully you'll find it relevant as a metaphor.
At JustWorks, we know these aren't just your employees, they're your people, like Molly, who just went from freelance to full-time just for you.
I just really believed in the vision and the dental.
Looking good, Molly. We do your human resources right, so you can do right by your people.
Did I have something in my teeth?
I was inspired to get involved in the space program when the Apollo 11 lunar landing happened on my 7th birthday.
Capcom, we're go for landing. Altitude.
There were echoes of that with the landing of Curiosity in 2012.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
So I never had the what do you want to be when you grow up or uncertainty about what I wanted to be. I always wanted to work in the space program.
The Eagle has landed.
I think the overall goal of JPL is to unlock the mysteries of the universe for planet Earth, and it's a privilege exploring the cosmos on behalf of our tiny third rock from the sun.
So Team X is our advanced design team, and before anything becomes a project, it's really an idea. And we help try to find the solutions to a point design to go anywhere in our universe. It's really about turning an idea into a realizable concept. While one person might have an idea, in order to make that idea become a mission, it takes a lot of people to do that. So it's really about putting all the right people in the room that can find that solution.
So if I had a theory behind teamwork at JPL, I would split it up into two different arenas. Scientists working with scientists is one kind of teamwork.
On Curiosity, the science community, there's several aspects of their approach to how they make decision making. Of course, we have the overall objectives of the mission is to assess the habitability and habitability history of Mars. There is a project science group, which are the most senior scientists led by our principal investigator for the mission, and they're the ones who set the overarching strategic goals for the science community.
Then there's the other arena, which is the work of doing a mission. So the Cassini mission is a flagship mission to Saturn. We're about to embark on an incredible end of mission. There were big questions that we did not have answered. Big questions about Saturn's interior. Big questions about the mass of the B ring. And one of the ways to answer those questions was to plunge the spacecraft in between the planet and the rings. And so the scientists went to the experts, the navigation team that does the trajectory, and they said, so, what do you all think? Is this possible? And they worked for many years, and we worked together, and we came up with this exciting end of mission that is going to take us 22 times in between the planet and the rings until finally we plunge into the planet itself. It all starts with the scientists, but you very quickly have to pull in the rest of the team.
As with many projects, there's this healthy tug of war between science and engineering. We always want to do our best for the scientists, but sometimes we have to protect them from their own voracious appetites. They want to do so much, and we encourage that, but not at the expense of our spacecrafts.
The engineers need to understand what the science is going after so that they can help us, and the scientists need to understand what the engineers are worried about and what is causing them to have constraints on what the science is that we do.
Even when we have an engineering meeting, we make sure science is well represented so that they can tell any little thing we're doing in the spacecraft that might affect science return. And then similarly, when scientists are meeting, there's often engineering representatives to have this dose of reality to make sure that anything they're trying to do is safe for the spacecraft.
We then also have a set of strategic and super tactical teams who are thinking ahead. What should be our goals and where should we be steering the vehicle to?
So you maximize the science and yet are as safe as possible, risk averse with engineering.
It's really exciting to see a team come together in that collective knowledge solving a problem when there's no one person that could pull that off.
If we bring the team together, that fosters a spirit of camaraderie. We appreciate each other more and our unique challenges and what it takes to make the vehicle work.
It isn't about the personality. It's about what are we going to learn for the benefit of humanity.
I think the future of space exploration is very bright. We're going to extend human presence in the solar system. There's a whole universe out there waiting to explore. Can't wait to do it.
I was inspired to get involved in this.
You there, Kent?
Yeah, we're here. You
Okay.
have, we see key components for investigators to promote effective organization of a research team. Okay.
Yeah, that's where we're supposed to be. So, so just a bit on the video. the part that intrigues me about it is when they're talking about the scientist-engineer interface. Um, in the work that I do, we have scientists who are principal investigators, and then we have a variety of other people on the team. We have project managers, we have research coordinators, we have data technicians, we have statisticians, we have what we call assessment personnel who measure certain variables for us, all of which are working together. And at least in my world, when they refer to the scientist engineer relationship, that's parallel to what I just described. There are the scientists who are coming up with ideas. They're writing objectives and aims and hypotheses. But that group of people, all those other professionals that are working with us, they're the ones who are helping us figure out how are we really going to implement the research strategy, the method that we're going to use to test our idea. So that kind of dynamic in NASA is very similar to where I live. Now, I want to switch gears a little to talk a little bit about how investigators might think about a research team and some ways that might be helpful. So this is a paper by Macris et al. In 2018, and they kind of outlined themes or issues for investigators to consider. First one is mission and vision. What is our team goal? Does it matter to the team? So it's not just a matter of here's my aims page. It's a matter of trying to articulate the value of this science. What's the purpose of it? Is there clinical utility? Is there practicality? Why are we doing it? And then somehow, in a storytelling way, if you will, translating it to the team in a way that connects to them. And that I think is one of the roles of the PI and the investigators in general. So is it believable? Do they buy that this is something that's even doable? And is it meaningful? Does it come back and somehow inform some phenomenon in nature that might be good to try and know more about? And then how do you, for an investigator, how do you really get the team to buy into this? How do you get them to start thinking about the ideas, their value, and utility? Another important theme for the investigator is really starting to think operationally. What are the team roles? What is our overall plan and strategy to meet the goals? So at least initially, how are we going to do this? Who's going to be doing what? What does each member of the team do in the plan? Who's going to screen the participant? Who's going to greet the participant? Who's going to draw the blood? Who's going to put them in the scanner? What are the different things that people are going to be doing? What are we going to do with the data? Where does the data go? How does the data go from the data technicians to the statisticians? And then how do we feed it back to the scientists? So lots of different independent areas. And the next point, how do these silos talk to each other? So you've got different people doing different things. And the question is, how do they stay connected and integrated? So in my world, we have these what we call clinical assessors who are doing interviews and other types of assessment. And how are they connecting to the research coordinators? How are they staying in sync to make sure that things are going right, the right amount of time is allocated, and how we're going to move from A to B if the participant gets done early? How will we know if we are progressing? What are the metrics that a team should have to make sure that the team is evolving? Is it just a real crude measure like how many people did we enroll in the study and how many of them finished? Is that it? Or are there other metrics about refining our methods, maybe satisfaction with jobs and things like that? How do we know if this team is really evolving? Does anybody on the team need mentoring? Who's best to do it? How should we go about that? And then, how much time does each member have for this team? Understand their workload and life outside of the workplace. And what I'm thinking about is a time when we had a subcontract with a statistician who was very, very busy, only had 4 hours, and to be quite frank, didn't even have the 4 hours. And so we couldn't really plan because we weren't really thinking about reality for that person and for us. Then another thing to think about, and I think investigators need to think about this, how do you impact your team? What is your style of relationships in a professional setting? How are you with interpersonal process? Lots of variability, none of which is necessarily better or worse than others. But let me just throw out a few dimensions for us to think about. For me, am I a kind of a gentle, patient, supportive leader, or am I a tough, demanding leader? Am I oriented toward being controlling versus autonomy promoting? Controlling is this. If I'm talking to Steve, who's in my research team, Steve, you'll be doing the task in the protocol, and you'll probably do it this way. Versus autonomy promoting. Steve, given your technical skill, I think you could do this task well. What do you think? And so you're engaging in a conversation, you're soliciting feedback, it becomes a more of a collaborative discussion. We'll talk a little bit about Daniel Goleman in a little bit, a person who does a lot with emotional intelligence, applies it to leadership. And one of the things he's written about is the notion of primal leadership, which is basically the leader's core affective or emotional state and its impact on the team. Negative versus positive emotional states are the kind of the extreme dimensions. And he makes a very, I think, strong case that if a leader is oriented toward, anger and frustration and irritability, as opposed to a more balanced emotional state, it has a huge impact on teams. Alternatively, I would just say if somebody is too lighthearted and has too much positive affect, it might not sell very well to the team either. So it's a question of a balanced perspective. Are you transparent versus hard to read? Do you use words all the time? You're just a talker who fills the verbal space? Or do you don't know how to fill the space? Do you sit quietly and kind of look down? What is your talk to listen ratio? When you're running a meeting, are you filling the meeting with your agenda, or are you asking others to report out as part of the agenda so that you're listening to their reports and that's the way the team works? Are the team meetings friendly? Are they hostile? If so, why? What's going on? Are the team meetings efficient versus disorganized? Something for us to think about. I personally think if you're a PI and you have a research team that you meet with, say weekly, I think the most important document you can provide for that team is a solid agenda. How are we going to use our time? And to demonstrate that you've thought about it and you're trying to come to the meeting informed, but again, collaborative and willing to listen. Nurturing a team by reading the team. And many of you have heard the phrase, read the room, just read the room. So you walk into a room full of people and you try and get a sense of the emotional tenor of the people in it. Is it upbeat? Is there tension? Are there conflicts going on? Where are they? With who? And kind of reading a team is similar. trying to get a sense of what do they need and want in a moment. Will they tell you, or are you going to have to ask? Does your team speak, or for whatever reason, are they basically listeners? Can you read the emotional state of the team and its individual members? Are you going to talk about it? Are you going to ask about it? Hey guys, what's going on? Things seem tense. How are you going to provide feedback to team members? Depending on the nature of it, the feedback and the issues, the question, are you going to do that in a team meeting, or are you going to have individual meetings afterwards? Maybe to give people positive feedback about something they've done well, or a concern or an issue that you have about their behavior and their work. Team building. Some people in this literature make a big deal out of this kind of periodic retreats, getting out of the lab, getting out of the traditional setting to a more a different kind of environment where there's more discussion and possible collaboration. Kind of helps the team see different sides of its various members as well. And then just want to mention, I think, a very important topic, and that is, I think really good PIs, really good leaders figure out how to delegate responsibility. Over time, the PI may benefit from determining the core tasks and functions for the research and who on the team is good at doing each one of them. Then give them responsibility and support to do it. So handing things off to people so they're running it, and they can run it well, they can run it with problems, but it's theirs, and the investigator is still there to support, but you give them the autonomy and the opportunity to do it. In that way, the PI helps each team member to be effective in leading the project. And this is a topic that's talked about quite a bit in this literature. Stanley and Anderson, 10 years ago, the greatest of the skills needed, this is for PIs, might be delegation. To bring out the skills and the talents of the team members, the leader should look for the team members for support and recognize that they bring a vast range of skills to the project. The leader does not have to do it all. And I do think in terms of teams, if it's really a team, which is somewhat reciprocal with an understanding that in research, there's going to be a PI who the buck stops with the PI. But I think that PIs who engage others and let them lead are well informed. Now, I'm going to shift gears, and I do want to talk a little bit about, just some kind of behavioral indices, behavioral traits, if you will, that might be helpful in terms of leadership across the board, but definitely in terms of being a research leader or PI. And I'm going to talk about the domain of emotional intelligence. Let me start out, though, before I get into it. I went to the internet, which I try not to do very often, but I did kind of look up leadership, and I looked for questions about, quotes about what is leadership. And I just grabbed 5 out of 100. And these are things that people have said about it over the years. And I think it's interesting to read it. I'll walk you through it. This is Ronald Reagan. The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. She is the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. And for those of us who were around during Reagan, I mean, from what I understand, one of his greatest skills was delegation. Everybody did everything. He didn't have to do quite as much. The next one, successful leadership is leading with the heart, not just the head. They possess qualities like empathy, compassion, courage. Bill George. Next one, leaders must be self-reliant individuals with great tenacity and stamina. Thomas Cronin. The very essence of leadership is that you have a vision. It's got to be a vision you articulate clearly and forcefully on every occasion. You can't blow an uncertain trumpet. Ted Hesberg. Last, leadership is a potent combination of strategy and character. But if you must be without one, be without strategy. And that was General Norman Schwarzkopf. So people have a lot of ideas, kind of top of the head, and some of it's rather compelling and based on experience. Let's try and dive down a little bit more into some traits that might actually influence leadership. So Daniel Goleman is a psychologist and professor. He's been at multiple universities. He writes for the New York Times. He writes on emotional intelligence, and the books he's written, which I'll show you in a minute. The Harvard Business Review lists several of them as 10 must-read books. Time Magazine, 25 most influential business books. He directs the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence at Rutgers, Lifetime Career Award at the American Psychological Association, Fellow for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and one book, which I think I have a picture of, Brain and Emotional Intelligence, New Insights. Interesting read. So these are just some of the books. And, these are kind of like, they're infused with science, but they're written for a broader audience. So just so you know, these are not high-tech, scientific books. They're more kind of translational books. So let me walk you through. He's done some factor analytic work, but I think, frankly, he's just kind of come up with his own categories. And so these are the fundamental dimensions, and there's a few that I want to walk through here. So the things that he says are important for leadership: self-awareness, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, your drives, your values, and the impact that they and you have on others. How do people react to you? Can you be honest with self and others? Can you be candid? Solicits feedback. People who are high in self-awareness do all of these things. They are not living in a vacuum. They are living in an interpersonal space. Self-regulation. This is about self-control. And if you go back to the earlier comment I made about the impact of negative affect on teams, if the way you deal with your negative affect is to displace it onto the team members sitting in front of you, that's probably not going to be very helpful. So some degree of being able to control your emotional states and your impulses, having patience, thoughtfulness, promote others' trust in you, maintain integrity, moral, professional behavior. All of them kind of consistent with high degrees of self-regulation. Motivation, achievement for achievement's sake. You're doing it because you want to know about nature. You're doing it because you want to solve the problem. It's not about making a buck, although of course we're always looking for money to keep our teams going. And it's not about self-promotion. Tolerance for failure. Scientists, I haven't done this in a while. I went to my ERA Commons page and looked at all the grants I've written over the years, and I looked at my batting average, basically how many got funded. A lot more didn't get funded than got funded. So you're going to fail a lot, and that's part of the game. Resilience, similar to that. In the face of failure, disappointment, letdown, frustration, how do you keep going in a way that maintains the team? Leadership is service sacrifice. It does help, I think, if you really do buy into the value of your science and how it might help to serve. Empathy, attention to other people's emotional makeup. So a willingness to look them in the eye, to read them, attuned to your teammates over time. Are they changing? Is something going on? Is there something with this person I need to check on? He or she doesn't seem quite right. Looking for a good ecological fit for people in the team. one of the things I used to do when I was working in the clinic was try and read my clinical colleagues and then help direct them to the right kind of clinical work for their character, if you will. I think it's important to do. And then understanding that the decisions that we make as a scientific leader, as a PI, are not going to always be what people want. And there are going to be people that get frustrated and disappointed in me. And then lastly, social skill. Building support to engage others in behavior that helps the mission. So kind of creating an environment, creating a network, creating relationships where other people are on board with you. Knowing that you need others and showing it through your inclusion and, quite frankly, through your appreciation. Your team knows what you want because you tell them. There's no guessing. And you don't have to yell, you just have to talk. And so I think that's important. You can have the hard conversations. Sometimes you have to have a hard conversation with the whole team. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations with individuals. And the hard conversations hopefully are difficult but constructive and helpful. And lastly, this is a mantra for me. This wasn't in the slide. I added it because this rings in my head quite often when I'm sitting in meetings. Is whatever I'm thinking, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? And does it need to be said right now by me? This helps me filter out whether there's something that I can sit on and ponder a while versus throw on the table, and I want it to be thrown on the table when it's fully baked, not half baked. So that's just a little strategy. Okay, so now we're going to switch to just a few comments on not just individuals' kind of emotional intelligence, but the emotional intelligence of groups. And there is a literature out there on this. Team emotional intelligence, Druskat and Wolf have written about this for some time. A group, however, must attend to yet another level of awareness and regulation. The group must be mindful of the emotions of its members, its own group emotions or moods, and the emotions of other groups and individuals outside of its boundaries. So this is a thing where hopefully you cultivate a kind of a world in your research team where everybody's tracking something about emotional tenor. And everybody does a little different, but it becomes an important thing. It's not just about the science. It's about how are we doing? How is that affecting our work? Now, I'm gonna, maybe I can do this. Jillian, you might get ready to run over here. So this is just a little deal from NCATS. It's the NIH Division for Translational Research. And for those of you that aren't familiar with them, I mean, one of their real take-home messages is not just about translating from the bench to the clinic or community to the clinic or whatever. It's about forming multidisciplinary teams, very similar to what I've been talking about, and that is we have different groups of people with different skill sets working for a common cause. That is a team. And they speak to this in this little brief video.
Every day, scientists around the globe make important discoveries and breakthroughs in understanding illness. Turning these discoveries into improvements in human health is difficult. The drug development journey costs too much, takes too long, and fails far too often. Meanwhile, thousands of diseases affect human health, but treatments are only available for about 500. This represents a challenge, but also a huge opportunity. There is tremendous need for people to discover, develop, and disseminate the next generation of science and technology to improve human health. This process is called translation. Translation is the multi-step process of turning observations in the lab, clinic, and community into interventions that improve people's lives in the form of diagnostics, therapeutics, medical procedures, devices, and behavioral changes. The field of translational science requires people with diverse skills, including biology, chemistry, computer science, engineering, medicine, and public health, to come together and work as a team in order to make a real impact. The fundamental characteristics needed go beyond individual specialization. It includes a broad understanding across the translational spectrum and being a team player, a rigorous researcher, a systems thinker, a skilled communicator, a domain expert, a process innovator, and a boundary crosser. These translational scientists are explorers working in teams, innovatively and collaboratively, searching for ways to break down barriers and improve patients' lives. Recently, translational projects have developed new medical devices, created gene therapies for rare diseases, built tools that support patients in their engagement in the drug development process, used data mining resources to advance biomedical data sharing, repurposed existing medicines to treat other diseases, and advanced drug development processes. The field is intrinsically rewarding because of the impact one can have on the science of developing new medicines and improving the lives of patients. Translational science presents tremendous opportunity for innovation and systematic change, developing solutions that make the process of developing a new medicine better, faster, and more efficient. Translational science is the youngest science with boundless promise to transform biomedical research and medicine. It requires innovative thinkers with a patient-focused approach to ensure that the patient's perspective is included in every step of the research process, breaking down barriers and collaborating to prevent, treat, and cure disease. If you want to make a real impact on the lives of millions, learn more about the field, or become a translational scientist, please visit us online. Join us.
Okay. No, that isn't what I want. Okay. Just a comment on that. Part I like that NCAT's the NIH division about translational science. The part that I really do admire in that organization is the way they encourage really multidisciplinary groups of people to come together to figure out how to take a basic science finding and maybe move it into translational space in human beings, and then actually begin to think about how can that become a mechanism which we can target with an intervention. So it's a broad range of people, which is quite exciting when it does happen. So let me see where I am. Yeah, okay. So in summary, practical tips for supporting a team. We can debate this. I think research teams need a strong schedule. The dose, I don't know, minimum weekly in my world. And you don't skip. The meetings have to happen. Members of the team report out on their work in meetings, and that's structured and baked into the agenda, run by the PI. Highlight progress and acknowledge effort. So when things do happen that are worth noting, when people step up during difficult times, you're proud and you express it. Maybe this is more me. If you want to send a text, I suppose you could. But when somebody that's been working with me does something that catches my attention, and I want them to know I think they did a great job, I go knock on their door, which sometimes concerns them, but usually not after they understand why I'm there. Never, ever, ever embarrass anybody. A psychoanalyst taught me that at the University of Wisconsin when I was in training, and I haven't forgotten it. Allow yourself, if you're the PI, but if you're a team member, to be human. Acknowledge mistakes, confusion, uncertainty, trying to demonstrate that you're smart and capable and never wrong, I think is not helpful. It's okay to be flawed and to have limitations, and to count on your team to help you take care of that. Laughing or smiling is good, but it doesn't have to become an addiction. I mean, a little bit of humor goes a long way, including, if you're the PI, being able to poke a little fun at yourself, being able to be somebody who doesn't know how to do things and counts on my teammates to help me. I think it's a good strategy. Again, reward good work and ultimately help good people advance. I'm not sure, but Kent, I think that's it. Kent, do I stop sharing now?
You can leave it. You can leave it up, and we can take any questions in the chat
Okay, I
or directly.
can't see anything, so you'll have to call out the questions.
Okay. We'll welcome any questions, either in the chat or you can ask them directly.
Steve, that was a great talk, and I really appreciate it. It really draws on a lot of your experience that I think we could really all benefit from. I have a kind of practical question. A lot of what you discussed relates to maintaining a team and coordinating the team. I think what is really hard sometimes is to actually form one. And so I guess my question is, and I don't want to be too overly general, but I think the trickiest part is how you invite somebody to become a team, particularly when you don't even have the funding yet to do so. Because what you get funded for, of course, is teamwork, but without the funding, you don't have a team, and without the team, you don't have funding. So
Right.
it's a catch-22 that I think is very challenging. So any insights you might have on actually how you form a team in the absence of funding, I'd love to hear about.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Gary, and it may differ, like in a university environment versus, where I am now in a integrated health system. But it's a valid point. And so the first thing is, and I do remember the days where I didn't have funding, and the first thing I did was I went out and I looked around for people who were interested in topics that I was interested in. I met with them. I would kind of get to know them, do a few things professionally together. Ultimately, we started doing smaller things. Like I remember with a couple of folks, one from UND and one from NDSU, writing pilot grants, 30 years ago to get a small amount of money. And then the three of us did a project together. And, we started building relationships. And then, we started bringing in students, and they were part of the team. They would help us as data technicians or research assistants or whatever. And then, it broadened out some more to, somebody knew somebody else, maybe local, but maybe from another university, who we would call and say, hey, we're doing this interesting work on X, and I know you do it, and we'd love to learn more about you. And pretty soon we start cultivating bigger, broader relationships. We'd go to meetings together. We'd start hanging out together a little more. And that's sort of how I started doing it back in the day. Now, we do have funding, And we have a fellowship program here. We hire some folks to be scientists with us who brings more people into the fold. If we need data technicians, we're advertising to bring them into the fold. So that's kind of post when you have some money, but carefully building a team is important, like you allude to. And I think it's again something about social skills, interpersonal process, a willingness to take a chance and reach out and then try and make it valuable, not only for me, but for whoever we're trying to bring in. So a real reciprocal type of deal.
Thanks. That really is the challenge. In fact, it's one of the things that I enjoy a lot about Transcend is that a lot of the folks there were people who we essentially recruited, yourself included, and said, look, I think we have similar goals. Can you invest the time in this? And I think that we can actually make it work. So really a lot of what you formalized, anybody who forms a team actually has to think through. So I enjoyed the formalization of it.
Yeah, no, agreed. Agreed. Any other questions or comments?
Doesn't look like we have any questions, but I would like to say thank you, Dr. Wonderlich, for the insightful presentation. And thank you to all the participants for attending today. And please remember to complete the short survey regarding today's presentation. And we hope to see you all back for the next didactic training on October 14th. Have a great day, everyone.